Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm Valerie Z, the founder of Spiritual Cardio, a 10-week group coaching program that teaches women how to make peace with their inner truth and practice self-love, where we heal in community by interrogating our inner demons until they lose power over us. I'm bringing you the powerful spiritual practices that helped birth my transformation because I want the same for you. I'm going to teach you how to build a love story with yourself and your inner child. So let's go. I'm sure you guys know by now how much I love doing this show. I pour my heart and soul into each episode to create a ripple effect of healing and self-awareness in the world. And you guys can help me make that little ripple into a wave. So I ask that if you find value in this episode, or if you had any aha moments, or if the show helps you navigate your life in a more positive direction, please share the show. It would mean so much to me if you would do that. And now let's get into it. Hi, everyone. This is Valerie Z. Thank you for coming back and tuning in to the Spiritual Cardio podcast. This is episode 22. In this episode, I talk with international speaker, mindset coach, author of Come Alive, and the host of the show Quest MB, which highlights the journey of entrepreneurs and creators, the one and only David Gibson. In this episode, David shares his story and the turning point in his life when he decided change was necessary. He shares how to discover your life purpose and his insights on how you can transform your mindset. Let's get into it.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure's all mine.
Thank you for joining me on the show.
Yeah, for sure. I had an opportunity to check out some of your previous episodes, and I love the work that you're doing to shine a light on empowerment and helping individuals really kind of get in sync with their true nature.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I wanted to do this with you, because I got your book and I've been reading it. I feel like we are parallel in the work that we do. It's very similar. So I'm excited to deep dive into your work and all about the wisdom that you've been able to tap into as you've transformed your life. So thank you for coming on the show.
For sure. I consider it an honor. Anytime I get the opportunity to share some inspiring words, I'm down for it.
Are you okay with us doing an opening prayer just to kind of,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
yeah, okay, just to kind of invite God into the space and, yeah, just to get centered a little bit. Dear God, thank you for bringing David and I together today. Let us serve your will. Let us invite people in to their true nature so that they can overcome suffering, mediocrity, and pursue their passions and serve your will for their lives. Amen.
Amen. I love it.
So, David, I've been looking forward to this for several weeks. I first want to express gratitude for you coming on the show. I know that time is very valuable. And just the fact that you're willing to do this with me and open up your heart, your story, your journey,
Yeah.
right? And share that with my listeners. I am deeply grateful. So, thank you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned, Valerie, I consider it an honor to be a guest and again to partake in this conversation and share some empowering words.
So I guess where we'll start is just who are you and your background?
That's a packed question. I guess begin kind of just describing who I am. Back in 2013, I was going through a season and a chapter in my life where, Valerie, I was aiming to discover myself. I found myself in a position where I felt like I was lacking purpose, I was lacking significance, and I wasn't doing anything that really got me excited or really brought forth life within me. And as I was overcoming these internal struggles and overcoming these personal breakthrough, so to speak. Ultimately, I started to discover myself. I know you're a woman of faith as well as I'm a man of faith. I began to dive deep into scripture and I started to understand who I truly was. And at that time, there were a lot of lies running rampant within my mind. And it was really hindering me from connecting with my personal power and the gifts and the talents and ultimately the purpose that I was created for. So, as I'm overcoming these internal struggles, ultimately I begin to share insights and I began to share the inspiration that I was receiving from those personal breakthroughs, and people will begin to listen. And to kind of fast forward just a bit, October 3rd of 2013, I got laid off from a job and a career that I was working at. And at that time, I had made up my mind that I was no longer going to do things that didn't express my heart. I have been given a vision to encourage individuals and to speak, to inspire them, but I had to overcome my internal fears, being able to communicate myself and express ideas in ways that I felt people would be receptive to. So at that time, that was a pivotal moment for me because I made up my mind. Again, I'm not going to do things that didn't express my heart. And at this time in my life, I feel it's important that I pursue the things that make me come alive, that I begin to take steps towards the purpose that I feel is calling my name, right? And ultimately, that kind of just sums up in many ways who I am. I'm just an ordinary individual that was given an extraordinary vision, and I had courage and the determination to make it happen. To kind of fast forward to 2024 now, I've been blessed to be able to speak at a variety of different events, and I do this for a living. I have this as a business, as a personal growth platform. And in addition to that, I have a media production company where we create content, including short films and documentary series, all designed to help young professionals really kind of grow in ways where they can build and scale their ideas in life.
That's powerful. And you sound like a really busy guy. So I feel honored that you're here with me now sharing your story. What was the turning point where you said in 2013, right?
Yeah.
What was the shift? Like what was the thought process? I know that there was a moment in your life where you got laid off and that kind of pushed you to go in the direction of your dreams. At some point, did you have thoughts? And what was that thought process like where you were like, something's got to give, something's got to change? I'm not happy. Because I feel like the evolution of thought for us starts at some point, and those thoughts are what drive us. Like there's a moment in our life where we can't unsee what we need to see, right? Like if we start taking accountability for our actions and our life, there's a moment where we can't unsee that anymore. And it's like you either go this way or you go that way. Which direction are you going to go? We hit a crossroad. What was that like for you?
So it's interesting that you say that because, Valerie, as you were speaking, I was reminded of a quote. I can't recall who coined this statement, but it was summing up what you were describing, where they said the moment that your mind gets exposed to a greater possibility or a new idea, it will
Yeah,
never be going back to what was. I remember that moment where, like I mentioned earlier, leading up to me getting laid off, I was going through this season and ultimately a journey of self discovery where I had recently graduated from undergrad. Here I was about to be the first in my family to graduate from college. And I was working a nice job, had a great position, 401k package and plans and benefits and getting bonuses and making a decent amount of money at a young age. But at the end of the week, I was unhappy, right? I knew I wasn't using my gifts, my talents, and ultimately I wasn't tapping into my greater potential. But simultaneously, at the end of the week, I was getting this thing that we call a paycheck.
yep,
So ultimately, as I described in the book Come Alive, I was comfortably dissatisfied, right? I found myself in a state where I was comfortable, but I was dissatisfied with where I was and ultimately who I was becoming. And there was a part of me that understood, right? Deep down on the inside of me, there's gotta be something better that life has to offer, right? Like there's gotta be something more purposeful that
right.
I was created for, right? Ultimately, it was in those moments that I begin to understand what the enemy sends after you is an indication of what's at work within you. So, as I'm experiencing these negative thought patterns, these mental health challenges, depression, and suicidal ideation, right? I'm learning that ultimately this journey that I'm taking is helping me become the type of person that can serve those individuals that are feeling and experiencing the same things, right? So for me, that moment was ultimately when I received that vision of me doing the work that I'm doing now, because I was at a crossroad where I didn't enjoy where I was, but I was afraid to step into something new. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I wasn't necessarily satisfied or fulfilled, but at the same time, I was intimidated to step into the unknown, right?
Yeah.
I was looking at some uncertainties and some things that I've never experienced before, some things I may feel I'm not qualified for. I'm dealing with imposter syndrome. So I'm
Right.
standing here in this fork in the road, and I had to make the decision, where do I want to go? Which form of discomfort do I want to experience, right? The lack of fulfillment or the discomfort that comes from me stepping into something new. But me stepping into something new can present something amazing and extraordinary that I've never experienced before. So that, I believe, was ultimately the moment that I began to take steps. And this didn't happen overnight, right?
Yeah.
This is a journey. But ultimately, when I made that decision where I said, you know what, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to develop new skills. I'm going to work on my communication skills. I'm going to become a better speaker. I'm going to find ways to pour into others. That's when it happened for me.
It's funny that you mentioned 2013 because in 2013, my life was transitioning.
Mm.
And it was a very dark period. But on January 1st of 2014, I decided to go to therapy for the first time to deal with all the childhood stuff that I had never dealt with before. And I feel like in life, we hit a crossroad and it's either more painful to stay as we are, or we ride into the unknown. And as uncomfortable as the unknown is, there's also a lot of beauty there because you don't know what's going to happen, but you know the pain of staying the same. And if you can associate pain with staying stagnant, then that is going to motivate you to move in the other direction. So that's what happened for me. It's kind of similar to your story as well. And then you mentioned something about darkness, right? And darkness within us is calling us inward. There's something there that needs to be explored. Darkness, pain, self doubt, self hatred, suicidal ideation. There is a gift underneath that. If we're willing to run towards that darkness, and explore it and interrogate it, there's a gift beneath that. And it loses its power over you when you start running towards it because it's not this big, scary boogeyman anymore if you're running towards it and pursuing it. It's when we're running away from that and we're trying to drown it and suppress it is when it feels scary.
It's interesting that you say that, because I was having a conversation just this morning with a client, and we were talking about fear. This particular individual was challenged in the area of them stepping into something that they're passionate about, but at the same time, it's intimidating. And as I communicated to them, Valerie, what you're describing is ultimately what I said to this person, where if there's something that you fear, if there's something that you fear, what you fear but never face, it will always control you, right? But we gain a personal power, right? And the power that that fear has diminishes the moment that you start confronting it, right?
Yep,
Negativity and fear tends to lose its power when you shine the light on it, when you become aware, and when you begin to challenge it. And I think this is something that many people struggle with, because a lot of times we just simply accommodate negativity. We grow accustomed to it. We become familiar with it. The story that we tell ourselves isn't always empowering. In some cases, it has a disempowering narrative, and then we just grow comfortable with it. And because we grow comfortable with it, it begins to influence every aspect of our life. But What helps us create a shift, what helps us change the trajectory of our life is when we begin to challenge, right? I like how you mentioned you challenge that negativity, right? You confront it, you interrogate it.
You start running towards it. Yeah.
You begin to dissect, where is this thought coming from? Or in many cases, to get to the truth of the matter, is this thought even true? Because what I've learned on my journey is that we don't have to believe everything that we think, right?
Correct.
Psychologists estimate that we have about 50 to 75,000 thoughts that run through our mind every single day,
Yep.
right? And the majority of them are negative, right? So we don't have to believe everything that we think. We get to curate, what thoughts we're going to be influenced by. We get to decide which thoughts we're going to give our mental consent. And I believe once you begin to master your mindset, this is when you can improve the quality of your life. When you begin to hone in and govern
Yep.
your thoughts, decide what's going to influence you, which emotions you're going to entertain, what story you're going to live by. That's how you create a shift in your life.
Absolutely. You're speaking music to my ears right now because I love having these types of conversations. They're just exciting, everything that you're saying is resonating because I've been through it. And I think that we evolve on a spectrum. Like, I don't know if we're ever done.
The journey.
Yeah,
There's a saying that says new levels bring new devils.
absolutely.
Every ceiling that you bust through becomes the floor to your next level. And there's always going to be challenges. But what we have to learn to do, Valerie, is we have to learn to look at our challenges as tools for growth. A lot of times we become intimidated by our difficulties, our challenges, and our trauma. And when we learn to reframe the way we see it, right?
Yes,
Ultimately, when we begin to look at it as an opportunity for us to expand our capabilities, for us to evolve as leaders, for us to become better individuals, then we begin to approach our challenges with a brand new perspective. And nothing changes your life more than your perspective. When you begin to look at something from a different angle, from a different lens, from a different vantage point, that will position you to begin to solve that problem with a more empowering mindset, so to speak. You get what I'm saying?
absolutely. And I think that's why inner work is so important, David, because
Yeah.
you have to begin to identify those negative thoughts as they arise. You have to, because you have to shine the light on them, or else you're not aware. That subconscious mind is powerful, right? You can try to step into something, or you can have a thought about, I want to be this, or I want to do that. But then there's something in the back of your mind that shuts it down. I'm not good enough. I could never do that. That's not me. What are people going to say? Who am I to do that? But really, who are you not to do it? It's that you have to begin to reframe, as you said, right? You have to reframe your mindset. But I think in order to reframe your mindset, first you have to identify those limiting beliefs. And that's why I do the work that I do. My niche is women, and I help them identify what those negative thought patterns are, where they come from, and then it's healing that story, the root of that story, right? The core wound. The reason why I'm so passionate about this is because growing up, well, there's a lot of trauma. So there's a trauma story there, but that trauma evolved into me putting myself down. So I want to do this, I want to do that. Well, you could never be that. I would shut down an idea before I could even voice it. And so that's why I'm so passionate about this work, is because I want to make sure that everybody that listens to this podcast or that works with me is going to become aware that they can shift their mindset, because the mind is so powerful. It can go one way, but you can also cultivate a different mindset. And that's why I was so excited to have you on. So, share with the listeners what your life purpose is and how you realized it.
Like I mentioned earlier, what the enemy sends after you is an indication of what's at work within you. What helped me discover my purpose was ultimately when I began to convert my pain into power, right? And as I begin to obtain power, right? We're using that word power because I believe in that word power. But
Absolutely.
as I begin to obtain that power, and what I mean by power is me mastering my mindset, me not being negatively influenced by my thoughts, me not being deterred by challenges, whether it be rejection or discouragement or disappointments, but me being able to process things more productively and more effectively right here with my mind. As I begin to experience these breakthroughs, I would simply begin to share insights and share things that were coming from my experiences. And I started to make note that people were listening. And people were not only listening, but they were also being transformed by some of the ideas and insights that I was sharing. So I began to understand that my pain being converted into power, and that power was becoming purposeful. And that's when I discovered that, the work that I'm doing is purpose driven. I believe I was designed and created for such a time as this to step into this calling that I have over my life. And it took me some time to get there, right? Because, like I mentioned, Valerie, I went through a season where, like yourself, I felt like I was inferior, like I was inadequate, like I wasn't good enough, like my life didn't carry any meaning nor purpose. I felt as if my existence wasn't important. So I struggled internally. And as I began to build myself from the ground up, I began to discover again that the lies that were running through my mind, I had the power to reject them and to release them. And not only that, but ultimately, I began to understand that it wasn't by accident that I was under attack. You know what I mean? It's like, are you like a basketball fan?
Kind of.
Kind of. Okay. Well, I'll use this metaphor as an example. Let's say, for instance, you have like right now, Caitlin Clark is, top of the news. You have LeBron James. You've got
Right.
Stephen Curry, right? These are players that when the defense approaches them, hey, we've got to double team them. We've got to corner them. We've got to isolate them so they can't be a threat, right? We don't want them to put points on the board. So the defense is going to work overtime to shut this person down. And the same is true as it relates to us living out our purpose. When you begin to look at your life, and many people question, why is it me that has to struggle with this? Why is it me that's experiencing this? Why is it me that it seems like my back is up against the wall? Why is it me that I take 10 steps forward and then ultimately I get pushed back 15? It's not by accident. That's an indication of how great your purpose truly is. And for many cases, right, we often feel like we're not built for what it is that we're experiencing. And you got to understand, you have within you the capacity to overcome what life is throwing at you. And it's going to start with you realizing that you are a purpose driven individual. You carry something specific and something unique on the inside of you. So don't give in. Don't give up simply because life is throwing you a difficult hand. What you need to do is to give your all, knowing and resting assured that you have a purpose on the inside of you. And what I've learned from personal experience, Valerie, the safest place to be is in the will of God, right? And when you are living out your purpose, you're aligning yourself with His will. So therefore, everything that you need shall be supplied. Everywhere you need to go, the path will be opened up to you. That's not to say that it's not going to be difficult. Those difficulties are going to help you evolve and grow, but trust and believe that where you're going and where you're heading, you will get there, but you have to keep pushing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is resonating because as I was on my healing journey and it was just beginning, I kept asking myself, why me? Why did that have to happen to me? Why couldn't I have a better life? Why didn't I have a better childhood? Why this? Why that? Right? It was why? And that's so disempowering to have that type of mindset, the why me. At that time, though, I was starting to go to therapy. I was starting to explore spirituality. By the way, therapy and spirituality are game changers, they're very powerful. But something started to shift in my thought process. And it went from why me to these are the cards you were dealt. What are you going to do with this? And that's when the mindset started changing. Well, what am I going to do with this? What can I do with this? And so then I decided to major in psychology. And then I continued on the healing journey, transforming my life, getting sober. I was alcoholic for many years. Out of all of that work that I decided to do on myself, turning pain into power, running towards my inner demons, I recognized that my purpose was beneath all of that why me. that why me story and all of that web of entanglement of pain and trauma and self hate, everything beneath that was tied to my purpose. And so I believe you when you say that the why me, the why, right? It's not serving you. You have to reframe that question to what is this trying to teach me? What is this trying to teach me about myself? And there's power in that if you're willing to go deep.
That's the ultimate question. Are you willing?
And honesty, right? Radical honesty.
Yeah, I mean, honesty is the key to progress. You can't expect to create any level of progress, whether it's in your personal life or building a business or in your career, if you're not honest with yourself. So many times we try to fake the funk and we try to avoid the truth. We can often blame people or circumstances or situations as to why we're not living the life that we envision or that we want or that we expect. And a lot of times we have to do, like you mentioned, that inner work and look at the man or the woman in the mirror
Yep.
and begin to confront, right, our beliefs, our approaches, our mindset, our tendencies, our habits, and begin to develop them in ways that keep us aligned with where we ultimately want to be. But that process begins with us being honest about how we're showing up, right? And not only that, but accepting it, you know, accepting it. And keep in mind, for those that are listening, acceptance doesn't necessarily mean you like it or condone it. Acceptance simply means, hey, I'm aware of it. I recognize it. And from this point on, this is what we're going to do to change the situation. From this point on, I'm going to evolve from this moment. But you can't evolve until you first identify where you're at, right? It's like you typing in to go to a specific destination. The GPS won't be able to give you the route until it first knows where
Where
you're
you're
at.
at.
So honest about where we're at to get the route to where we're going to go.
Absolutely. And then also, acceptance is also releasing resistance to the past, right? It's accepting that, hey, that's who we were back then, but that doesn't have to be our story for the rest of our lives. We have the power to change this today if we choose to. But we have to get honest with ourselves, though. We have to look ourselves in the mirror and take accountability. And the reason why this is so powerful and I'm so passionate about it is because we have to get honest with ourselves. Like my abuser was long gone, but at some point in my life, I was abusing myself now. And so then I held the power, I held the key, not somebody that abused me when I was a child. It's me today. In 2013, 2014, I recognized that I had become my own abuser for many years, alcohol, drugs, and the way I was living my life. It was a self destructive lifestyle. And I recognized that I was the problem. And that's a game changer right there. That was the crossroad moment, right? Taking accountability.
Hey, ladies, are you craving transformation and personal growth? Are you ready to get radically honest with yourself and own your story? Are you ready to build confidence so that you can manifest your goals? If so, then this may be just what you're looking for. Spiritual Cardio is a course in transformational wisdom that combines traditional spiritual practices with real life experience. At Spiritual Cardio, we heal in community where we can be vulnerable and raw. Because when one woman speaks her truth, she begins to heal, and she opens the door for another woman to speak hers. At Spiritual Cardio, every lesson is designed with you in mind. That includes practical tools with relatable real-life examples. At Spiritual Cardio, we help identify and release energetic blocks so that you can become the architect of your destiny. Head over to valeriezapeta.com to read the powerful testimonials from previous clients and register for an upcoming session. Group and one-on-one coaching is available. All sessions are live and in real time. Now back to the show.
David, what advice could you give someone who's listening that hasn't yet discovered their life purpose?
I will begin to suggest to anyone that may be on a search for their specific purpose. Again, one, look at where you're challenged. Look at the areas that seem to be tested in your life. and ask the question, what gift are my challenges presenting to me? The struggle, it may be real, but ultimately, what value can come out of this struggle? That's one. Also begin to look at your strengths and your capabilities. What are some things that you can do easily that other people may struggle with? What are some things that come natural to you that you seem to be operating in a specific element and your light is shining in that moment? Identify that. And then three, begin to look at the areas where you're passionate about, particularly those areas that are serving others. What are some needs that really you're passionate about addressing and helping others with? And begin to go on a search mentally and emotionally and even spiritually on how you can begin to package these things together. And it may come to you, right? It may come to you instantly or it may take some time. But ultimately, the key is for you to open up your mind to a new possibility, right? In order to do this, what I've learned, in order for us to believe in possibilities, we first and foremost have to believe in ourselves. So, as you were talking, Valerie, about breaking the pattern of self sabotage, what we have to learn to do is fall deeply in love with ourselves. And I'm not talking about coming from a narcissistic perspective, but what I'm saying is, like I mentioned earlier, embracing who you are, accepting who you are, and loving who you are, because we're only going to rise to the level of success that our self esteem can begin to absorb. So that's the foundation. Once you begin to gain an understanding of your value and your worth, you can start connecting with a sense of purpose. And as you're connecting with a sense of purpose, now your mind is open to discovering that purpose. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So again, to that one, look at the challenges that many people are facing, look at your gifts and your talents, and look at the challenges that you're personally facing, and ask yourself, how can these things begin to connect? And also keep in mind, I think this is something that many people fail to realize, but I also believe that in many cases, our purpose can be seasonal, right? One season of your life, you may have one specific purpose, and in a different season of your life, that purpose may transition. It may shift to something different. So it's about us being open and aware and mindful of where we're at in that particular season in our life and being willing to adjust, right? Being willing to step into where we're being called.
That's powerful. So, how can someone tap into their true identity, to their authentic self? Because a lot of people, I think, are like, just going through life, maybe in survival mode, maybe got married at a really young age, maybe had kids at a very young age, and they're just kind of, going through life, existing, but not really living. Sometimes people find themselves unhappy in their 40s because they started life at a very young age and didn't really know who they were at that time. So for somebody who feels stuck in a rut, feels unhappy, maybe wants to pursue something different, but also knows that there's something in here that needs to shift and it's maybe tapping into their authentic self, what advice would you give them?
Here's what I would share with that person. I'll answer it by sharing this quote. I'm going to paraphrase it because I can't recall the exact wordage. But ultimately, the quote says something to the nature of, we find it difficult to be happy simply because we're holding on to things that make us unhappy.
Ooh,
As simple as that may sound, I believe it's very powerful and profound in its nature. Where, think about it, if your hands are occupied by stress and worry and your doubts and insecurities and your trauma and your past, you don't have any space to receive the things that will bring you abundance and joy and peace and success in many regards, right? So, in many cases, it's not just about learning new things to experience more, but it's more about unlearning the things that we've grown accustomed to that don't serve us, right? We have thought patterns that we've grown accustomed to that make us feel stuck. And in order to get unstuck, you have to break that thought pattern. You have to break the cycle of that thinking. So begin to evaluate how you're showing up. What are the thoughts that are influencing you? What are the beliefs that you have? What emotional states have you grown accustomed to entertaining, right? Have you grown accustomed to entertaining fear? Have you grown accustomed to entertaining anger? Have you grown accustomed to being anxious, right? And actively learn how to unlearn those specific things, right? And as you begin to connect with yourself, what begins to happen is ultimately you start gravitating towards what it is that you were created for. Case in point, as I began to connect with myself and who I truly was, and aligning myself with the truth of my existence, not the lies that I had grown accustomed to, not the thoughts that my words didn't carry any value or that I was significant or inferior, but who God had called me to be. As I started aligning myself with that, I started stepping into my element. And then as I stepped into my element, I started to attract opportunities, right? I started to attract everything that was in alignment with my purpose, because we have to keep in mind in life, we don't attract the things that we want. We attract the things that we are. So ultimately, what we must learn to do is to begin to become who we truly are. From a spiritual standpoint, out the gate, you got to connect with God, discover who it is that you are, right? Say, for instance, if your car is breaking down, you may have a BMW, you may have a Mercedes, you may have a Range Rover, so to speak. You're not going to take this to some jackleg mechanic because they might not necessarily have the know-how or the skill set to be able to operate on that vehicle. You take it back to the manufacturer because the manufacturer understands every detail about that specific vehicle. And the same is true for us. You are fearfully and wonderfully made by the Creator. You must connect with the Creator to understand what you are created for. Does that make sense?
It does. Some of the most profound insights I've gotten about who I am and connecting to my true identity has been through meditation, has been through connecting to God in meditation. I'm not part of any particular religion, but I believe that we can connect to our true, authentic self through spirituality. We can connect to our soul and get insights about who we deeply are underneath all the mud, the noise, the pain, the story. And some of the most beautiful moments of my life have been in meditation. I'm talking tears of joy, just sitting there, legs crossed. And so I think that to piggyback on everything that you're saying, somebody listening to this can explore meditation, just explore it. A lot of people tell themselves, I can't meditate, I can't turn off my mind. But it's not about turning off your mind, it's about allowing your mind to run free. And as it does, it's almost like the way I describe it is it's like inside of our mind, there's a sky, and then there's clouds passing through, and those thoughts are clouds. And then eventually the mind just quiets down, and there's just this sky. And that is when you can tap in. That is when you feel something so powerful. Almost words can't describe it because it's a feeling of peace. It's a feeling of serenity, renewal, joy. Even if you just feel that for 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 10 minutes, even if you feel that, then you can tap into another part of you that is within you. And that's how it starts.
What I have learned to experience through meditation, because I'm an advocate meditator as well, every morning I have a meditation practice. But when I share this with individuals, young professionals, and leaders, I get the same resistance where they say, I can't meditate. It's very difficult. It's very hard. And what I have found to make it challenging for many people is because what meditation is it allows you to focus in on your consciousness, right? It allows you to become aware in the moment. It allows you to think about what it is that you are thinking about. And for the average person, most people never sit down and have a conscious thought, right? They're allowing their thoughts to run rampant in their mind, or in some cases, they're allowing society to think for them, right? They allow what social media or what mass media is saying to dictate what they believe and what they think. So it's uncomfortable for them because now you're face to face with your thoughts, your own personal consciousness. And of course, it may be challenging at the beginning, but like any skill that you develop, the more and more you do it, the better you get at it. The more you practice it, the more progress you're going to make with it. And as you begin to sit with your thoughts, You begin to develop the skill set of, again, mastering your mindset, where you begin to understand, hey, this thought of insecurity that arises in my mind, I don't have to entertain it. Or this thought of fear or worry or anxiousness, so to speak, that's trying to rob me of my attention, I can release it. And what you're experiencing and what you're describing, Valerie, is the moment when you start releasing those negative thoughts and you make space for positive vibes and positive frequencies to run through your mind. That's when you're at your best. That's when you open up space for joy and peace, self compassion, self love, and you're experiencing the abundance of your mind because you're making space for it, right? And this is a skill set that we can take with us in every area of our lives, right? Where we can begin to step into every single day with the peace, the clarity, and the type of mindset that will help us show up effective and create progress and productivity towards our goals and our dreams, simply because we allowed ourselves permission to conquer this thing that we call our mind through meditation.
Several years ago, I was going through a very tough time trying to get sober and rock bottoms and whatnot. It was as simple as a friend asking me, "Hey, have you ever meditated? It might help you." It was that simple. She planted a seed. And at that time, I had never meditated. I thought meditating was levitating or something. Like, I thought it was something like that. So I did a quick Google search. I went on YouTube, looked at a 5-minute video, tried it out. That's how I started. And meditation transformed my life. So for anybody listening, meditation can transform your life too, right? And I think some of the most profound inner child healing moments were in meditation for me. Because when you sink in and you're in that zone of serenity, whatever needs to be healed is going to come up. There are things that are going to surface that just need to be healed, and my inner child was one of them. So it's a beautiful place to be, and it's a very transformative experience that can be done free, right? In the privacy of your own home, morning, afternoon, evening, even just starting out 5 minutes a day. It's helpful. David, so another question I wanted to ask you is, how can someone listening to this overcome insecurity? Actually, before we get into that question, you said something earlier that I want to make sure that we touch on for people. Is you said that when you started to build yourself up, what did that look like? Give examples on how someone could build themselves up.
Out the gate, um, and this is what transforms our lives. It was me shifting my identity, who I associated myself with, right? Or how I defined myself. I think in many cases, we often try to change our behavior before we try to change our identity. And one of the rules of our mind is that we're wired in a way where our behavior will always be consistent with our identity. And there's many examples of this, right? You look at, people that have won the lottery and they obtain millions of dollars, and then years later they end up becoming bankrupt. I saw a study not too long ago that said, I believe it was close to 87% of people that win the lottery end up going broke within 7 years. And the reason is because they acquire a new amount of money, right? Their bank account is enhanced tremendously, but they have the same mindset. They have the same habits. They have the same tendencies. They're in the same environment, surrounding themselves with the same people, which ultimately is shaping their identity. And before you know it, they spend all the cash. And in some cases, they're worse off than what they were before. Another example of this is at the top of the year. Many people say, New Year, new me, right? I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to get snatched. I'm going to get the gains. And research has proven that by the month of March, a great percentage of people that enroll or join a gym and get a membership no longer attend the gym and no longer are going after fitness goals, simply because, one, they tried to change their behavior but maintain the same identity. And again, our mind is wired in a way where our behavior will always be consistent with our identity. So for me, as I mentioned, as I begin to dive into scripture and become aware of who I truly was, who I identified myself to be began to shift. And as it began to shift, I became aware of the negative thoughts that were running through my mind. This is, I guess, step two, if I can give us those steps. I shifted my identity by becoming aware of who I truly was. And then I began to become mindful of the negative thoughts that were running through my head. And I began to actively reframe those thoughts by simply challenging them, right? As you talk about somebody that may feel insecure in a particular area or space, the biggest overcome that is to lean into it, to confront it, to step into it. For me, I always had this fear, and I felt inferior in the way of providing value, right? I felt as if my words didn't carry any value, that nobody would want to listen to what I had to say. So I started doing the very thing that I was afraid of doing. And I started to see the fruit of me opening up my mouth. So here I was conflicted because in my mind, negativity and these thoughts that were disempowering were telling me that my words didn't carry any value. But there's physical evidence of me opening up my mouth and transforming lives. I began to believe the physical evidence, and that began to shift the thought pattern that was created in my head. So ultimately, those are kind of two steps that I would say people to begin with: change your identity and then change the way that you talk to yourself. And this is a process, because what I'm describing didn't happen overnight. It took time, but day by day, and the more and more I applied pressure in this particular space of changing my thought pattern, the more empowered I became.
And it's true about the shifting of how we talk to ourselves. And spiritual cardio, one of the practices is mirror work, looking at yourself in the mirror and doing these positive affirmations as you are looking yourself in the eyes. You have to begin to change your mindset. So how is the world going to receive us, right? If we cannot look ourselves in the mirror and say, hey, you know what? I'm proud of you. Hey, Val, I love you. If you cannot accept yourself in the mirror, then the world is going to reflect what you feel on the inside towards yourself, right? So it's important that we shift that mindset on how we talk to ourselves. So mirror work is a very powerful tool that I teach my clients.
Yeah, I do an interesting, a very similar practice at some workshops that I facilitate for small businesses and leadership groups. But ultimately, I hand them a mirror, right? It's got a handle on it, and then they hold it, and then everybody's looking around like, yo, what's going on? And I instruct them, hey, what I want you to do is, I want you to tell me what you love about yourself, but not say it to me. I want you to tell yourself. So here it is. They're in a room. In some cases, there may be, 15, 20 people that are in this room. This is more of a kind of intimate group, so to speak. And what I've noticed, right, it's like clockwork. Every time we do this exercise, it's always the same result. People are holding it, and sometimes their eyes are jittery. They're moving from left to right. They find it difficult to look themselves in the eye.
Yep.
They're moving their around. And not only that, Valerie, but also they don't say they love XYZ about themselves. They say, well, I like this about me and I like this about myself, right? So we go around the entire room and then we describe what we saw and what we witnessed.
Uh-huh.
We find this difficult to do because we have each developed the habit of constantly berating ourselves,
Yep.
character assassinating ourselves,
Yep.
sabotaging ourselves, that it's uncomfortable for us to affirm who we are, to express love to ourselves, right? In some cases, right, society often says, oh, your ego's in the way. Why are you talking about yourself in such a highlight, right? And we have to understand, no, you can love on who you are. You can appreciate who you are. You can affirm who you are, because we spend so much time berating ourselves to the point that we don't feel confident. We don't feel assured of who we are, right? We don't feel empowered to step into spaces being our authentic self. Once you begin to develop the habit, again, like you mentioned, of affirming yourself, speaking life over yourself, encouraging yourself, it's going to transform how you enter into spaces and ultimately how you live your life.
The very first time I looked myself in the mirror and tried to say, I love you, Valerie, I cried because I didn't believe it. I was saying it and it was so uncomfortable because it just wasn't true. But if you do that for 60 days in a row, something changes. And so that's why I think mirror work is so important, is because at first it feels really awkward and really uncomfortable. But coming from a place of self hate, it was not only hard, but it was just very sad. I really wanted to love myself. I was desperate for self love when I realized that I did not love myself. And the way I had been living my life was a demonstration of self hate, not of self love. Ego would tell me, of course, I love myself, right? But when I started to evaluate my life, my behaviors, alcoholism, self destructive lifestyle, I realized this is not self love. This is not that. And so when I realized that, again, that crossroad happened, right? Which way am I going to go? What do you want to do with this? What is this trying to teach me? Well, I was desperate for self love from that moment forward. And I said, no matter what I do, I'm going to freaking find it. But all of that work pays off because as you do that, you're sort of peeling back the layers of an onion and you get to the point where you discover your purpose. Spiritual cardio, we would not be having this conversation right now had I not started that, had I not recognized that I was in self loathing, not living from a place of self love. So these things within us that we need to explore, me being the recognition of self hate, was radical honesty, right? Because I could have lived in deception and kept telling myself, of course I love myself. But I chose to get radically honest with myself. And so radical self honesty will change your life if you're willing to do the work that is going to help you move away from that darkness or that story or that pattern of behavior that's going to lead you to something else. Yes, the unknown is uncomfortable, but there's also beauty on the other side. This takes a little bit of courage. So at the end of your book, there's something that really jumped out at me and I thought it was beautiful. It's not a matter of what you could do or should do. It's a matter of what you must do, what you need to do. It's really not you that's chasing after your dreams. Your dreams are chasing after you. Don't run away from what's calling you. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, I mean the premise of the book was really built off of a quote from Howard Thurman, and Howard Thurman, in many ways, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s mentor. And in one of Howard Thurman's lectures, he made the statement where he said, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is more people who have come alive." And that's where you get the come alive title from, right? And ultimately what I believe is happening is we each have been placed on this earth for a specific reason, for a designated purpose, and life has a way of presenting that purpose to us. In a lot of ways we often run away from it because that purpose may make us uncomfortable. It will force reinvent ourselves in some cases. It's going to force us to confront ourselves. It's going to force us to adapt new habits and mindsets and philosophies and, lifestyles in many regards. But nonetheless, we were designed for something specific. So our objective and our responsibility is to run towards it, to embrace it, to honor it, to respect it, and to trust it, right? Because we have been designed to impact the lives of others, right? You're not just occupying space. You're not just consuming oxygen. You don't just have warm blood being pumped through your veins just simply to exist. But what makes us come alive, what gives you the feeling of life, so to speak, is when we give unto others, right? Think about when you give a gift to a loved one, a significant other, your children, or a family member. That brings so much joy, right? On the inside because we all have this nature within us where we want to give because that's who we were created to be givers, to serve, to impact, to empower, to inspire. So it's our personal responsibility not to run away from the things that may seem challenging or uncomfortable, but to say yes to expanding our capabilities, say yes to honoring our gifts, say yes to living the purpose that you were designed to fulfill.
What's something that people can start implementing in their lives today to start changing the direction of their life?
Oh, I mean, we've talked about a number of different things, Valerie, in this conversation, but I think to sum it up, one massive thing that you could begin to do, like I briefly mentioned earlier, and you went into detail about it as well, which is a morning routine. And that morning routine may include meditation, it may include visualization, it may include affirmations or you speaking life over yourself, it may include you journaling. But nonetheless, it may start off as a subtle shift, right? You create a morning routine that helps you show up empowered, and ultimately, what begins to happen is you're taking steps towards transformation. It's like studying airplanes, where you can adjust the angle or degrees just very small, right? If you shift the degree in an airplane, very small shift, it can end up in a completely different destination. And the same is true for this subtle shift of creating an empowering morning routine that sets you up for success, that helps you connect with yourself from within, helps you connect with your creator, and helps you connect with your goals. That will position you to show up more effectively. And as you show up more effectively, you'll be able to seize more opportunities that will move your life forward.
Agreed. Final question, David. What is the most valuable lesson you've learned in life thus far?
Oh, man, I don't, that's hard to answer on the most valuable lesson.
Or you can do one or two, however many that you want to share, because I'm sure there's not just one.
I'll give you a couple. Your belief will always carry more power than your reality. Be nice to people, because the people that you meet on the way up will be the same people that you meet on the way down. Always position yourself to serve. Find a way to do more for others than other people can, because when you serve more, do more, be more, and give more, you'll have more opportunities to earn more. And I'm not just talking about monetarily. You'll be able to earn experiences that will transform your life. And the quality of our life is largely dependent upon the quality of our relationships. And we have relationships with everything. You have a relationship with people, whether that be your family members, your significant other, whether that be with your coworkers. You have a relationship with food. You have a relationship with money, and you have a relationship with yourself. So the quality of your life will always be influenced by the quality of our relationships. Do what you love and love what you do, because life was meant to be full of love.
And pay attention to what makes you come alive.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, where can people find you? How can people support your work or maybe work with you?
Simply put, you can visit my website, elevationisAmust.com. That's where I have so many resources that are available. That's the online shop as well, where you can purchase books and other products that are available on the online shop. Then you can stay connected with me on social media. I'm more active on Instagram and YouTube. At the number one Gibson is my handle, and then youtube.com/David Gibson.
I will make sure to include those in the show notes as well.
Awesome.
David, thank you so, so much for doing this with me today. I am grateful and I hope that this episode reaches many people and helps somebody change their life.
I too agree. I hope that at least one person is touched and empowered by the words that we spoke and the discussion that we had. And for you, continue this journey. It's a never ending journey of becoming the best version of ourselves. So keep taking it one step at a time.
I agree. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to the Spiritual Cardio Podcast. If you're ready to transform your life and become the best version of yourself, sign up for an upcoming group session today at valeriezapeta.com. If you found value in the show, there's several ways you can support my work. You can share this episode with a few friends, follow at Spiritual Cardio on social media, make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcast platform, and you can donate to the show via valeriezapeta.com. This is Valerie Z. I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Hey, thank you for showing up and spending some time with me. If you loved this episode, please make sure to subscribe. And for exclusive content, you can sign up for my newsletter at valeriezapeta.com. I'll see you guys at the next show.